Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think everybody's back in order.
Kia ora,
We're
Your
going
Worship.
through those questions.
Sorry, Your Worship. I've moved and I've sent that through, and I moved an amendment to your recommendation. So I think with that goes first. My understanding. Kia ora, Your Worship, but I'll listen to you. Thank you.
Okay, well, you just got slightly ahead of yourself. I'm not going to stop you doing that, but if you can just back up a teeny bit there. Where we are here, with this one here, that's up there, and Councillor Leone has changed their mind about seconding, but Councillor Fletcher wishes to replace that. So that's now there, but now I'm going to open it for debate, and I think you wish to debate something or other, Councillor Filipaina. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and the debate, it's actually I'm putting amendment through, which understanding orders need to be debated and voted on first prior to the substantive, Chair. So if that amendment can go up, I'll then wait for Sandra to confirm that the amendment will be debated on first prior to your substantive.
Okay. We now have a tabled amendment, so we'll defer the debate on the original amendment, and we'll now have a debate on. Sorry, we'll defer the debate on the one that I put forward, and was seconded by Councillor Fletcher, and we will now have to have a debate on Councillor Filipaina, seconded by Councillor Fuli's amendment. Okay, would you like to speak about that, seeing as you've put it forward?
Thank you, Chair, and also I just reserve my right to. Oh, well, I'm unsure now. That's unusual. I don't know whether I have a right of reply. I don't think I do with the amendment, so I better make this a very good crack at it. Yeah, definitely. Look, I firstly want to welcome Councillor Morris Williamson into the family. Sorry, I thought that you had it confirmed that you were part Māori. Well, if you are, Councillor Williamson, welcome to the family, and we will have open arms for you and most probably have a hangi. So I just wanted to welcome you to the family. Chair and councillors, this has been a very long journey. You know, 2017, I, and along with my previous colleagues on the Auckland Council, we've been fighting the battle, and you know, the battle, hopefully, in a few minutes, will be won, where there are and there will be Māori representation around the governing body. I need to point out that it's around the governing body that we're talking about. We're not talking about any other thing but the governing body. We're also talking about one vote. It is our community on the Māori roll. So for those people that have continually said unelected members, they will be elected, and they will be elected for those that are on the Māori roll. So I just needed to be clear about that. 2017, interesting enough, those, and it was myself and previous Councillor Fessel Collins, it was him and myself that put the amendment up in regards to supporting Māori seats, a Māori ward, in regards to the governing body. And that discussion centred, and it was interesting how it centred on the Independent Māori Statutory Board. It should not have centred on the Independent Māori Statutory Board. Why? Because they were set up by legislation. They are a separate piece of legislation. Ours is around Māori representation. When I ended up getting humbled enough to be elected in the Manukau ward with previous councillor Anai Arthur and I, the first phone call I received was from Radio New Zealand. Radio New Zealand said to me, look, we've just spoken to Jamie Lee Ross, And Jamie Lee Ross said, we don't need Māori seats, we don't need Māori representation, because there are Māori already on the council in 2010. He said that he was one, and he's been welcomed into the family way back in 2010. He also said there was Des Morrison. Des Morrison was the other one that was quoted by Radio New Zealand, and also myself. And they asked me, Alf, you don't need Māori seats at Auckland Council because you're a Māori and you can talk in regards to Māori issues. And I said to them, no way at all, because I do not have the mandate. I don't have the mandate to speak on their behalf in regards to the four well-beings. And I want to acknowledge the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta in regards to putting those four well-beings back into legislation. And I do not have the mandate. Why? Because I got voted by the community in the Manukau ward. They voted me, so I have the right. And I do speak on behalf of the Manukau ward. I do not have the mandate. Do not have the mandate to speak on behalf of Māori in Tāmaki Makaurau. I want to acknowledge Pana Whenua, Mātā Waka, and Mātā Waka for those, because I want to be very clear of those that are not from this area. Those like myself who's from up north, up in the Ngāpuhi. So for me, around them, I want to acknowledge the communities. I also want to acknowledge all the communities that have ended up giving their feedback into this, because it has to be, because we went out for consultation. So there is going to be one vote. There's going to be one vote. And for all those that have come in here, and I remember the consultation we took place here around the representation, and we had mana whenua, we had, I think it was Hoane Waititi, we had Te Akatai Waihua, I should go to my notes, but all the mana whenua groups that came in, and they ended up telling us, our people, our Māori community here, as mana whenua, we are supporting this. 18 of the 21 local boards are supporting Māori ward. 18. As you can see with B, the Joint Governance Working Party. That Joint Working Party will have an input. They will have input in regards to representation, but as you can see, it's the final number of wards will be undertaken as part of that representation. So for me, all I'm asking is that it is about time that we do the right thing. The right thing is to have a Māori voice who has the mandate from those on the Māori electoral roll to speak on behalf of Māori across Tāmaki Makaurau. That's all I'm asking. I'm asking my colleagues to also do that and vote for this amendment, because this is the right thing to do. Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Questions? Councillor Dalton.
Kia ora, thank you. Really happy to speak in support of this amendment, and that is because it's the right thing to do. I look at the first amendment, which is asking us to, well, the substantive now, which we'll speak to later, but it's asking us to go back and do a whole lot of work again, the work we've already done. And I can only make an assumption is that is so we can include the discussion around IMSB in that conversation. This has got nothing to do with IMSB. They're not here. They're not at this table. They do not get votes at this table. And they have a completely separate role. And we can say it as many times as we like. For people who don't want to understand it, for people who don't want to believe it, excuse me, Your Worship. They will never understand it. And what I've come to understand is that we can't get inside each other's heads. We're on this journey believing in it, believing in our responsibilities under the treaty, or we don't. I accept the Treaty of Waitangi
Just quiet, please.
as the founding document of Aotearoa New Zealand, and I recognise Māori as tangata whenua in Aotearoa New Zealand. I recognise myself as tangata tiriti, which you all are too. You are all tangata tiriti. Through my English descendants who co-signed that treaty. We're a multicultural society, but the very special position of the Indigenous people in this country does give them certain rights. And so the clarion call of one law for all is fine on one level, but it doesn't apply to others. I find it rich that the majority of people that have been in power for 183 years are, in the most part, European. And now we ask for equal treatment of our treaty partner. We're going to call out racism. That's pretty rich. The evidence shows us that Māori have not been treated as equal partners. The statistics are there. We see it. We see it in, well, I see it in my community. You might not see it in your communities. I've experienced it through the work that I have done alongside youth, alongside vulnerable families. These things are real. I can't speak for Māori. I've done my best, but I do not understand the lives that Māori live any more than I understand the lives of the people from our Sikh community or our Indian community. I can't speak for Māori. We have a special place here for Māori around the table. They are a treaty partner. And I will be supporting this, and we should be progressing this for future generations. This isn't about racism. This is about upholding our obligations that were signed 183 years ago by our ancestors in good faith, and we have let this our side of the bargain down. We cannot expect, we don't expect anyone else that comes into this country to conform to live the same way that we do as tangata tiriti. Yet we do force Māori to come in, we do force Māori to comply with everything that we've done. Look at the consultation we do. Every single consultation that this council does, 70 to 80% returns by European. Māori, low. And I guess people might think that's because they're lazy and they can't be bothered. It's because we are not consulting with them the right way as we should. We hear this consistently, particularly from Councillor Foley around Pacifica. Previous Councillor Collins said the same thing. How can we ever make change? We will never make change while the same voices are being heard around this table. I will be supporting the recommendation, the amendment by Councillor Filipaina and Councillor Foley. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor Fletcher now in the debate. Thank you.
I want to say that I don't think this is about whether we're on that same waka or not. It's simply about the absolute flaw after the enormous amount of work that was undertaken by Dame Margaret Baisley and Peter Shand and others with the Royal Commission, which enjoyed fulsome support and allowed for 2 seats and also an additional seat from the Mana Whenua Forum. That model would have been so much more functional for Auckland at every level. So much of what we are debating in this chamber is to do with the flaws in the model that Rodney Hyde delivered up. in a very fast-tracked kind of way. And I think that the fact he ignored that and instead delivered a divisive, dysfunctional, fractious model to us is really what we're grappling with here today. I do support Māori seats. I have been on the record as supporting Māori seats from 1990 on. I supported all of those measures within Parliament, and when the Royal Commission came out with what I felt was a very workable model, I gave it my fulsome support, and I want to continue to do so today. But what I want to see is the Mayor to be able to deliver to the incoming government, and we don't know what that government is going to look like at this stage, but on so many levels, whether it's to do with transport planning, whether it's the ORAFA legislation, whether it's to do with the numbers of local boards and all manner of things, no government has been willing to take on the review of the Auckland legislation in the way that needed to be undertaken. So we struggle with planning, we struggle with funding, we struggle with so much. So today ought not to be. Surely we can show the maturity to say these are enduring decisions. We need to renegotiate with central government what it is we want from our Auckland legislation for the people of Tamaki Makaurau. We are, the largest city in the country. If we can't get the model right and we just have to keep tinkering and tinkering and tinkering, it will never work. And the one thing I know about my Māori friends and whānau is that they take a longer term perspective on things. And I want us to become far more strategic, far more objective, and I want us to have, through the Mayor, the mandate to go and renegotiate the package of legislative changes that we need as a matter of urgency, not to be put off like every other time. Oh, well, we might get it in if we're lucky and we, in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time. If we can't sort Tamaki Makaurau out, the rest of the country is really stuffed. And I have to say, I think Rodney Hyde did a huge disservice to all of us, and that we find ourselves in this ridiculous debate where I think all of us really want the same outcome, but it's a question of delivery. And if it means that we have to wait until next week, until a government is formed, that the Mayor can then go and represent those things. And I know that the Mayor is supportive of Māori seats. I don't believe he is opposing them, but I think it's got to be done comprehensively. It's got to be done with the support of all of us behind him. And therefore, I don't think we should ambush that by rushing this today when it's a much wider, more considered discussion that we need to have. So with that in mind, I think rushing this today is foolish, and I support the Mayor in wanting to try and defer this to be able to take into account additional work that we know needs to happen. Thank you.
Councillor Hills, please.
Kia ora, Mayor, thank you. And just once again, because it has been brought up, on the electoral roll, when you sign up on the form, there are 3 questions. One is, I'm a Māori of Māori descent, please enrol me on the Māori roll. I'm of Māori descent, please enrol me on the general roll. I'm not of Māori descent, you will be enrolled in the general roll. Then it says, I declare that I'm eligible to enrol, all the information has been provided is true and correct, and I understand that giving false and misleading information is a criminal offence. Yes, those aren't checked, but just like I doubt that most of us are never checked if we actually live in the electorate or actually live in the house that we say that we have on there, but we all, as citizens of New Zealand, do the right thing and declare accurate and correct information in the way we believe on the form. On this issue here, we have voted, I think, twice now, over 6 years, as far as I believe, for this. I think one of those times was actually unanimous that we go forward with a Māori seat under the parliamentary model. The issue should not be controversial, and I do think people, former MPs such as Councillor Williamson and others for 1993 extending Māori seats through the MMP election to make sure that was fair on Māori, on the Māori roll, ensuring that the number of seats for the country continue to increase based on the number of people on the Māori electoral roll. So I acknowledge the MPs in 1993 that entrenched those even further. On this case, this doesn't give anyone extra rights. This doesn't take away rights of others. It doesn't even force Māori to be involved with a Māori seat. They can choose to go to the general roll if they would like to vote for the people standing in the general ward seat where they live. They could decide to stay on the Māori roll or move on to the Māori roll if they feel that they would like their one ward vote on the Māori ward to be the representative for the Māori ward to speak for them. This is one person, one vote. Although in my case, in the North Shore, we get one person, two votes because there's two councillors for that ward, but that is where it gets a bit confusing. But in this case, people are not getting extra chances to select more councillors than is allowed under all the other circumstances. So it isn't taking away and it isn't giving more. This is about treaty partners. This is not about race. This is about ensuring that we are living up to our obligations. But it is something that has come from a long time. I remember Mayor John Carter 10 years ago saying that Māori seats was apartheid and would divide the country. Before Mayor John Carter left the far north, he said Māori wards, it's time to come, and he voted for and supported Māori wards and said his mind had been changed by the communities and understanding over time and the thought and the importance of it. So people's minds can change, and people's minds do change. And I think the rangatahi, the tamariki, the young people in my ward, I was judging a talent show last week, Glenfield Intermediate. They had an amazing, rousing haka at the beginning, kapa haka. My son is almost 2, and he somehow knows a few of words and the tune of the Māori, the te reo version of the national anthem, which I was very surprised that was happening in the house the other night. Young people are not opposed to this direction, in my experience. This is the future. They understand the treaty. Mātariki, I think Chris and I went up Takarunga on the first year that the Mātariki was a holiday, and I've never seen the numbers of community marching up the street. It would have been thousands, I think, Chris, that night. I was astonished. The road was closed. People marched up the Maunga, and it was phenomenal. The waiata, the lantern making, people from all walks of life across our community celebrating together Mātariki up one of our Maunga and celebrating the Indigenous history, celebrating the Māori culture. It wasn't seen as a threat, it wasn't seen as a negative, it wasn't seen as something that we should be feared. And I feel like, from when I was at school, that the change has only got better and has only meant that more understanding can be made. I'm Māori. Obviously, some people would say you don't look Māori. And yes, I have a very real lack of understanding of the culture, and I'm working on that myself, but I wish that I had the opportunities young people have now on the learning, the understanding, the opportunity to understand where we've come from, the history of New Zealand, the understanding of the different parts of our community that is so important. Will this fix some of those issues going forward? No, but it is another step forward into how we heal and how we make our city better and give that person a representation to speak on behalf of Māori that some of us try to do, as Councillor Dalton said, but this will actually help that. But I think we need to remember it doesn't take anything away, and it remains that everyone still has one vote for a councillor in the ward that they choose to be on the roll for. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Councillor Williamson, to represent the newly found Māori point of view.
Mayor, I've always had in the political world a strong view that it's the general public that should have a say when it comes to constitutional change. I've been on the wrong side of two. I campaigned in 1990 for the 4-year term, and on the 27th of October 1990, I remember it well because I'm still getting counselling for it, we lost, and the 3-year term stayed because the public chose it. Preferred it to have gone to a 4-year term, but it didn't. 3 years later, we put up again a referendum to the public on whether we'd move from first past the post to mixed member proportional. I campaigned for first past the post. I'd been a member of parliament under that for some time and thought it was a better system. I lost. But if anything is correct, it's the public huge numbers, the strong law of large numbers as a base of statistics, they have a better view than 11 of the 20 of us may have, because that's what the numbers could come down to. I feel very uncomfortable 11 people deciding a constitutional future for anything, either for the central government or for a city council that's a third the size of New Zealand. And I just think that whatever we do, and I'm not opposing it, I'm not opposing it or proposing it, I'm just saying I just don't believe that something of this magnitude should come to a small group of us that probably won't be here in 3 years' time, or certainly within 6 years, and we may have made a significant change. I think that referenda on such constitutional issues are central. And I notice Australia had a referendum recently on something called the voice. They chose to let the Australian public decide whether they wanted to go that way or not, and I would urge every one of us here today to think we're nowhere near as important as any individual or 11 individuals, that we should determine where this goes. And my second concern is that when we were doing the budget, I was bold enough to say I just hate the fact that we've got to go out and consult on this stuff. Because within the general public, there's a view of everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. They wanted to spend more on this, they want to spend more on that, but they don't want to cut this and they don't want their rates to go up. And I said, well, I can remember saying at this table, if we go out and consult and we get all the answers that I expect we'll get, I don't know how we're going to put a budget together or ignore that consultation. And I know there are members around this table that said we should listen carefully to that public consultation and what they say. Well, if that's the case, have a look at the numbers in our public consultation on this. If we're not going to get to a referendum, have a look at the numbers. Overwhelmingly with regards to individuals, and even very close call when it came to the Maori. And that just means that as an indication of what a referendum would look like, this is something that we should be listening to at this point. So I'm going to vote against Al Filipaina's amendment. I'm reluctantly even going to vote for your kicking it forward. I would have preferred for us to have said no to any of this, and that we will allow a referendum to occur at some stage in the future, because if the people of Auckland want it, they should be allowed to have it. I'm a big fan of that.
Okay, thank you for that. Public, try and keep out of it. Councillor Leone, please.
Ka tangi te titi, ka tangi te kaka, ka tangi hoki ko au, tihei mauri ora. Kia ora koutou, kia ora mea. This is a huge day for us today. I know that there are people that have been fighting for years for Māori to be at this table. Māori wards are long overdue in Tamaki Makaurau. More than half of our country has already implemented Māori wards, and we are lagging behind. It's time to get Māori elected members to the table, and I'm talking about the governing body, not the committees. Governing body is where the big decisions are made for this city. We know when it comes to money, when it comes to the vision of our city, that's where the decisions are made. In a number of the hui that we have here at governing body, we're continuously looking at issues where there is lack of Māori outcomes being met. And time again, we do not have that strong Māori voice to be able to challenge those views. It's disheartening to hear some of the kōrero that's been brought up today around the consultation, when we know that Māori are only 10 to 13% of this population. The European population will always outweigh the Māori voices for this city. So that is not correct to say that that's an equal representation of what the views should be around Māori wards. Today I want to acknowledge my Ngāti Pawa ancestors, who were one of the original iwi of this city, and all the other iwi that were originally here. I want to acknowledge my Ngāpuhi Nui Tonu side, and the fact that we know Mātā Waka make up a significant population here in Tamaki Makaurau. They need to have a voice here too at governing body. I want to acknowledge our Māori local board members that are here, Narissa Henry, Logan Saul, who are watching today and have come to support and have been supporting for years. Their mahi and their work is so important in terms of the future of our city. I also want to acknowledge Nanaia Mahuta and the work that she did on Māori wards. It had a huge impact on her and her own whānau to be able to make the changes that we have today, the opportunity to have Māori wards across our country. Like I've said, Māori wards are long overdue in Tamaki Makaurau. There have been marches up and down this main street here in our city so that Māori can have elected members represent them in this amazing city. The long-standing relationship between Māori and Pākehā was built on our founding document, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which we have the opportunity today to honour 180 years later. I just want to add too that I have travelled around the world to more than 60 countries who always make a comment about how well we are doing here in Aotearoa in terms of our representation for Māori and ensuring that Māori have a voice. We have our Māori seats in Parliament and we should also have them here. Unfortunately, here in Tamaki Makaurau, some don't agree with that view, but I'm proud to say, as a Māori person that has travelled the world, they can see that our country is actually moving forward. It's time for Māori representation in our biggest city of the country, in Tamaki Makaurau. It's time not to be fearful of change. It's time to stand up and support the next generation of Māori leaders coming through in our city. Let's be the change that we want to see for our next generations. Let's not make excuses today about IMSB being on committees. There's no one sitting here at this table from IMSB. Look around. They're sitting in the background. They should actually be here. We should have Māori representation at this table. We need to see a Māori mayor and a Māori prime minister in our lifetime, and how is that ever going to happen if we don't provide a pathway for them? The numbers are close today, I'm well aware of that. And I hope that some of our leaders in this city look beyond their years that they will serve here at governing body and think about the future of our city and the future generations of our young people to come who will actually learn about New Zealand history and the role that Māori have always played in terms of our leadership in Tamaki Makaurau. Kia kaha koutou, it's time for change. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Councillor Fuli, please.
Kia ora, Worship, and that is truly a difficult act to follow, and I want to acknowledge and tautoko our wahine toa, Councillor Kieran Leone, for that kōrero. I just want to add my support. Obviously I'm seconding it, so I'm going to support it. I want to pick up on a point that Matua Williamson made about ignoring consultation. I want to remind people that it's been done more than once around this table. LGNZ, most of our local boards told us they didn't want us to pull out, and yet many on that side voted for us to pull out, and we did. The shares, the largest number of Aucklanders actually said they wanted us to keep all the shares. The second largest number said they wanted us to keep most of them, and then we sold them anyway. So it's not true that we always follow the letter of the consultation law, and certainly not true in this House. Your Worship, I just want to support the kōrero that's come from Councillor Kieran Leone today. Many people have said they support Māori seats. As we've been looking at this over time, many people say and have said that they support Māori and Māori voices. Well, today is the day to do that. Today is the day to show the rest of Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, and the rest of Aotearoa, New Zealand, who are watching us, that you truly support having Māori at this decision-making table. Let's not kick the can down the road again. We've heard that term used a lot, not kicking the can down the road. Well, that's what the substantive motion effectively does. It kicks that can down the road again. And I'm sorry, but this is not rushing it. By voting on it today, by standing up and voting to have Māori seats today, this is not rushing it. Māori have been waiting since 1840 to be equal partners in the treaty that they signed. This is not rushing it if we do this today. If we say we all want the same thing, we want better outcomes for Auckland, we want more voices around the table, we want better representation, then today is the day to do that. Your Worship, I'm mindful that Auckland is home to the largest population of Māori in the country, and yet that's not reflected around this table. And as many have said, yes, we've got the IMSB, and I'm thankful for them, but they aren't here today. They aren't here for the really big, important decisions that we make for our city. This is our opportunity to truly have Māori representation at this table. I'm really tired of, seeing our tangata whenua have to beg for that, to beg for us to let them sit at this table. It's shameful. And having people clap today, oh, mate. It's just, I don't really have the words to describe it. But today I'm going to stand alongside Māori in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. I'm going to stand alongside our councillors who've put this up, and I'm going to vote in support of this. Kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Fully. Deputy Mayor Simpson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, this is a really important decision for Auckland and for all of us, and it's not an easy one. I respect each and every one of you around this table, even when we don't always agree. I think it's critical to take the emotion out of our decision and be very clear as to the context. This is not about whether we have Matariki or not. This is not about stopping us delivering Māori outcomes. It is about asking whether we wish to establish Māori wards. Before we make that decision, I think it's important to look at what we currently have. We're set up very different to any other council in New Zealand. Now, you could argue we're actually ahead of every other council in New Zealand when it comes to a Māori voice. We have an independent Māori statutory board, and it's got 9 members, and it has 3 key objectives: to develop a schedule of issues of significance to mana whenua and mata waka of Tamaki Makaurau, to generally advise council on issues of significance to mana whenua groups and mata waka, and to provide 2 members on council committees that deal with natural and physical resources and any other committees as requested by council. This means that we have Māori participation on all our committees except for this one, and systems to include the IMSB members in processes like appointments of people on boards. It's not a system without issues, but it's there. And I have seen many mayors, including this one, involve IMSB members even at governing body level. Even though they don't have a vote, they have been involved in the decision to get to that final vote. Second, and rightly so I believe, we've gone out to all of Aucklanders to ask their opinion. Now, I'm sure we've all promoted that consultation, and the response has probably been one of the highest we've ever had on a single issue. What was really interesting for me, that out of all the iwi, they didn't all respond. Got 19 iwi, they didn't all respond. And of the individual Māori, so forget Pākehā, forget Europeans and Asians and Indians and everybody else in our multicultural city that we live in Māori individuals, the numbers were 54 in favour and 44 against, so it wasn't exactly conclusive. My next point I want to talk about is my own ward, and I know I'm a regional councillor, but you'll all know that Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei is based in my ward. Their view is important to me. I noted that their submission did not express a specific view, but instead focused on their preference to ensure that the appropriate recognition of their tangata whenua status and for any representation model to reflect their special relationship as tangata whenua in Tamaki Makaurau. I've discussed their submission with them. They're aware of my position on this issue, and they have not requested me to change my vote. No seat at the governing body can replace the direct, enduring relationship between Auckland Council and tangata whenua of Auckland, such as Ngāti Whātua. In my view, strengthening those relationships should be the focus, and providing 1, maybe 2 seats will not necessarily achieve that. And finally, I'm keen to work with however many parties will be part of the new government on the best deal for Auckland. My understanding is at least one of those parties has definitely opposed and wants to repeal the act that allows for Māori seats. And I don't believe that having a vote today will help that negotiation with central government. So to Councillor Filipaina and Councillor Foley, I totally support you on your resolution, on your amendment for A, but I'm sorry, I will not be supporting you on B. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Could I have Councillor Henderson, please?
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I'll start off with an apology because it's kind of, I'm sharing Councillor Williamson's discomfort, probably not for the same reasons, but I'm pretty uncomfortable here as a Pākehā, sitting here discussing representation from tangata whenua. I'm not tangata whenua. I have a democratic duty to do so, but I also have a legislative duty to do so, and I raised this in questioning earlier. Section 4 of the Local Government Act, I'll read this again. In order to recognise and respect the Crown's responsibility to take appropriate account of the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi and to maintain and improve opportunities for Māori to contribute to local government decision-making process. Maintain and improve. That's a duty upon us, a direct duty in the Act. I want to back some of the beautiful kōrero that I've heard earlier in this debate. Councillor Filipaina, Councillor Dalton, goodness, a really, really beautiful way to start. And I sit here thinking, look, I can't follow that, but I feel duty to say a few things, I suppose. I'll point out that in listening to communities, our most important duty here, and this goes in line with my discomfort, is to listen to Māori communities. Māori communities back it. They're telling us what to do. It's our job to listen to that. And if that's not quite to your taste, 18 local boards also told us what to do, including Henderson, Massey and Waitakere Rangers in my ward. I want to shout out to them. We listen to our local boards as well around here, in my view. We get the model right by referring it to the Joint Governance Working Party as per it says in this amendment here from Councillor Filipaina. And I just encourage people that have said that they support Māori wards, that's great, right? The appropriate course of action, in my view, is just to vote yes to this amendment of Councillor Filipaina and then send it on and we'll work on it, right? We'll get it right, you know? Anyone can show up to that committee. But what I'd say to that line of thinking is to show us that you support it. If you're saying that you're supporting it, show us. Show us today with your vote. Show your community with your vote. Just quickly, I want to acknowledge the Waitakere City Council that went on this journey prior to amalgamation. Back in 2005, they tried to introduce Māori wards, 2005, and it was narrowly voted down. One councillor saying it was too much too soon. It was too much too soon, nearly 20 years ago. In 2010, when the amalgamation occurred, the Deputy Mayor at the time, Penny Hulse, said that not including Māori seats was a missed opportunity that will not come around again for a long, long time. Now, that council led with its taumata runanga work, but it also acknowledged that we needed to do more work, and that was all the way back then. So I'm saying to everyone here, if not now, then when? What will change in 2028? Our treaty obligation will not change. Our beautiful modern community will march on and it will get more diverse and more multicultural, and we're going to make progress and we're going to do good things for the city. All that's going to happen. But the treaty obligations and the treaty partnership that we have will not end. So it's time to show leadership today. It's time to vote in favour of Māori wards. Mā pango, mā whero, ka oti te mea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Ferry, please.
Kia ora, and just acknowledging the whakatauki that Councillor Henderson used at the end there, which I believe is if we weave the black and the red, the work will be complete, which I think is really appropriate. I support this amendment because it is well past time that we had Māori representatives elected by Māori and with their mandate at this table, as we do not have today. Under the treaty, we are one nation but many people, and we live here and have rights through two avenues. Tangata whenua, people of the land, who have been here for generations and are recognised as First Peoples and Indigenous under international law. And tangata tiriti, people of the treaty, as Councillor Dalton referred to. People who have come here, or their relatively recent ancestors did, because the treaty allow for us to live here. People like me, tauiwi, my rights as a New Zealander flow from the treaty and not from the land. Most people living in New Zealand, most people around this table, are in that same waka, and yet everyone at this table has to be elected as if there are not two avenues to be New Zealanders, but only one, as if there were not two treaty partners, but only one. With only general seats, only one treaty partner is effectively represented around this table because of the tyranny of the majority. While Māori may be elected in those general seats, they are not elected by Māori to represent Māori. All respect to my colleagues with whakapapa and those in the audience, those online, those of us who have family members who are Māori. And thank you to Councillor Bartley for speaking up for against some of the offensive marks made before, which were hard to hear and must have been much harder to hear for my colleagues with whakapapa. The parliamentary model is not, in my view, ideal, but it is progress. It can be a step on the path to the Royal Commission model, and to that end I would encourage Councillor Fletcher, who supports the Royal Commission model, to support this as a step on that pathway. As Councillor Henderson has said, if you support Māori seats, this is your chance to show that, and you should vote for this amendment because it heads in that direction, even if it isn't going to be perfect. We do not need additional work, as the substantive motion would ask for. As Councillor Filipaina has outlined at length, we are not rushing this at all. It is overdue. Councillor Foley has spoken to that. Councillor Henderson's points about Waitakere City's attempts and Penny Hulse's comments back in 2010. This is not a rush. This is the slowest rush I have ever seen. I was interested to hear that Councillor Williamson is uncomfortable with 11 people making big decisions for our country or our city. I note that his experience as a cabinet minister, which would usually be as one amongst 20, which may have come down to 11 people voting on huge decisions for our whole nation, although of course we shouldn't even know the details of that due to cabinet collective responsibility and confidentiality. With respect, I suggest that saying that we're in a rush or that we need to do more consultation or more work on this might be something of a cop-out in this debate. Now, to get back to the parliamentary model, we call it that because it reflects what we see in central government. 7 Māori seats elected from the Māori role. We've done quite a bit in question time about how that means no extra votes for anybody. I note also that Auckland actually had Māori seats from 1986 to 1989 under the Auckland Regional Authority. Each parliamentary electorate was able to elect a representative to that body, including the Māori seats. The sky did not fall then. It has not fallen at central government from having Māori seats since 1878. 68, sorry. It has not fallen in those areas that have adopted Māori seats at the local level. The sky would not fall here either. Indeed, we would hold it up better together. I want to acknowledge that, like my colleagues, I have received hundreds of emails in the last week, mainly via the Hobson's Pledge group, opposing Māori representation. I have read all the ones I've received prior to 11 a.m. this morning, and I note that many are cut and paste, which is fine. I'm not denigrating that, but I have particularly noted amongst those who have added bits or written their own words, there have been some really problematic and disappointing sentiments, and I believe a lot of that is based on disinformation. One of the words that's been used quite a bit has been apartheid, and I just want to read a short definition. So the apartheid from 1948 to 1994 in South Africa was the racial segregation under the all-white government of South Africa that dictated that non-white South Africans, who were at that time a majority of the population, were required to live in separate areas from whites, use separate public facilities, and contact between the two groups was limited. They were physically separated, they were not allowed to marry, they were not allowed to have children across racial boundaries. None of that has anything to do with having Māori representation elected by Māori for Māori at this table. It is a completely different story, and one that in my experience, mana whenua, mata āwaka and everyone at this table thoroughly and utterly reject. So I want to put that to bed right now. There is no apartheid as a result of this decision. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.